Hi everyone, Jane here. Thank you so much for watching today. Welcome if you are new to my channel, and welcome back if you're a returning viewer. Your views are all very welcome and appreciated. Today I am going to be using the Autumn Tales book by Maremi. It is the most recent autumn book, and I wanted to build a scene. I have my mixed media pad to the side there, and the other day I was testing out some of my acrylic paints to check that they were still working, and so I ended up with some blobs of paint, so I just spread them on the page without really thinking about it. And then I thought, I know what, I'm going to use that as a starting point for a background, so I don't have to worry about colour. It's just already there. And this is a really good use for some of your collage, because it can go onto these backgrounds that you don't quite know maybe what to do with. They're just sort of where you've wiped things off. It's a really good way of using them up. So I am cutting out, I've cut out a background and I cut out my little fairy character. And then I decided I did need some more elements that were going to build up the scene at the front. In particular, because when you're sticking down one of these background pieces, even if you tear around the edges to make it blend easier, or if you cut it very neatly, quite often you will still be able to see that edge. So quite often adding other elements over the top that sort of go between the two parts of your page, the collage and the background, can help to disguise those those pesky edges that we might not want. So I did a little bit of cutting here on the video. Now I've only sped my video up by ×2. So if you want to, you can, on all of your YouTube videos, if you go to the settings, you can always speed up and slow down videos. There's also usually the option to add on captions if you want to as well. So do always remember that there are settings for if you need to alter the way a video is playing for you, because obviously we, as YouTubers, will put them in a speed or that we think is suitable. Sometimes it's faster because it's a long process and it doesn't require a lot of slowed down explanation, but other times it's better to leave it at a slower speed. So this is sped up from the real time, but it was only sped up twice, so hopefully you will see what I'm doing. So to give the edge of this background image, and I've chosen this cute little, I'm not sure, it's a house of some kind, but I think it's got like a maybe some kind of nut or seed as a roof, and lots of leaves. But I wanted to have this as my background, and I wanted to have a nice soft-ish edge. Now I've already coloured the background. That means that obviously whatever I stick on top is probably going to stand out quite a lot. So this is why I needed to do a few different things, because I didn't want all that white starkness of the paper to be showing, but I didn't want to go around cutting it out individually because there was too many little bits. So I've given it a sort of a rough tear. That means you get more of a softer edge, which makes it easier to blend. And then I cut out the other little pieces a little bit closer to the edges. After I'd done that, I did decide to go back and find some leaves, because I decided that I would need some things for the top of the image as well. Now I wanted to add some more into the background, so I'm going in with my acrylic little paints and a couple of stencils. Now this first stencil I showed you is an old one from Stamps Away. It says 2014 on the packaging, so I mean that is quite an older stamp. So I will list what I use in the description box below, but I will not add links, because I think it's better for people to either use what you have, look for your stash, find something similar, or if you don't want to use acrylic paints, you might want to be using inks. If you don't want to use inks, you might want to use sprays. You know, use the things that you enjoy to create your projects. But also, because I know that I have people who watch from all over the world, it's no good me putting down a link to somewhere in the UK if they don't ship up to another country, or if, you know, the price then becomes prohibitive. And then also a lot of what I use is in my stash. I'm not using new products all the time. It's things that I've had for a while, so they may not even be available. So the two stencils I did use was, that first one was from Stamps Away. Like I said, it doesn't have a name on it, so I don't know, it's just leaves. And the other one is from Lavinia, and that is Glory. And the paints I used were, I used Titanium Buff Deep, Sky Blue Light, and Greyish blue, and they are the Amsterdam acrylics from the pastel set. So I started off by just putting a lighter coat of the Glory stencil down, and I just wanted to sort of not dull down, but so mute the background a little bit because it was quite bright and I didn't want it to be as bright. I wanted the focal points to blend a little bit better. And then I thought within the elements that I'd cut from the book, there was quite a lot with a sort of a muted blue. So I had this greyish blue, but it wasn't quite right. And so that's why I mixed it in with a little bit of the sky blue and just added a few leaves across the page. And there it is. Then I wanted to blend some of that whiteness out from the paper because it was very stark against that background. So I'm going in with a couple of distress inks. Now I am going to be sticking these images down with matte medium. And matte medium and distress ink don't always play nice together. So because distress ink is very water reactive, it even if you touch it sometimes with your fingers, it might come off a little bit once you put it on a project. But I wasn't too worried because I knew that I'm trying to get that blended look. So I wasn't worried if it moves once I add the matte medium over the top. So the two colours of distress inks I am using are Antique Linen and Tea Dye. Now, tea dyes I find a nice one if you don't want something quite as dark as a vintage photo, but you still want that slight aged look to it. So I went round on the main image and now I'm going round on the little images just to sort of tie in the edges, because with my little fairy she had lots of bits coming off her hair. Now I could have cut them off, and sometimes I do, but I didn't want to on this one, so I left a border, but obviously then that leaves the white paper behind, so I was just wanted to colour in the background so that it all looked like one image and not that there was some excess there that should be gone. And when you cut anything out, you often end up with like a white edge around your images, and I like to get rid of that. Sometimes I do it with ink, sometimes I get something like my uni pens or my Pitt pens and just colour the edges like that, just to take that white starkness away, because it's not so bad when you're sticking directly 2D to a page, but if you're going to raise anything up, sometimes you can really notice those edges. So I'm using the Liquitex Professional Matte Medium. This is just my personal choice. Any sort of collage glue, some people use Pritt sticks, you could use acrylic glue like Cosmic Shimmer or any of those sorts of white PVA type glues. I like this one. You can use gel medium. Some people use clear gesso. I would say unless it's a very, very thin paper, potentially wouldn't use gesso because it's not got so much of that the adhesive quality, but you can certainly get sort of very fine tissue papers and things sometimes down with that. So I like matte medium because it's a nice runny glue, very what's the word, it's got a high viscosity. That sounds quite good, doesn't it? High viscosity. And I put it on it was already on the page actually, so I didn't put as much down as I usually do because it was already all over the page. So I put it on the page, I put it on the image on the back, and then I do seal it over the top. If you are sealing over the top, you need to be aware that if you then want to use anything on top of your images that's going to be a more water reactive product, like you want to use watercolours or anything you're going to water out, you may want to then add a layer of transparent or clear gesso over the top just to give a primer for those products, because a matte medium is an acrylic, so it's a plastic, so it will give a bit of resist. And I'm actually going to use that to my benefit with the product I'm going to use to add some shading in today. But if you want to use things that are going to just slip off of a plastic, then you might want to add that primer layer in between. Now I'm adding my pieces mostly around where the edge of the background bit has been stuck down. This is because I realised once I stuck that background piece down and I had that stenciling in the background, I would have probably been better off sticking my image down first and then adding the stenciling so that it went over the top of the image. but I hadn't thought that far ahead. So I ended up with some of the leaves behind the sky looking a bit odd. So I added the other collage leaves on just to sort of cover that up a little bit. Now I've got a couple of my Pitt pens here. These are by Faber Castell. They are India ink, and when they are dry they are permanent, but they're not an alcohol pen, they're not an acrylic pen, but they are sort of, that they give you some translucency, which is what I like about them. Sometimes an acrylic pen is a bit too opaque and it just covers everything up that you put it on top of, which sometimes that is exactly what you want. But in this case, I just wanted to add a bit of shading. I didn't want to go in so much with my Inktense pencils today. I wasn't feeling that's what I wanted to do. So these two pens are, the yellowy one is actually called Green Gold, which is very odd because it's got no sort of no look of green about it. It looks more like a yellow ochre to me. And the other one is India Red. So again, I would have put that more as like a sort of some sort of reddish brown colour, but that's the names they've given it. So what I am doing is I'm putting a little bit of the ink down, and then I'm using my finger just to smudge it, because it's on top of that acrylic medium. And you do with these pens, you get a very, very small amount of time where they are wet. You get a little bit more if you're doing it on top of something like the matte medium. If you're doing it on normal paper, like the paper where it's going to be really porous, it's going to sink in really quickly and not be able to be moved. But in this case, I just wanted to smudge it in a little bit. So I'm going in with a bit of the Green Gold, a little bit of the what was it called? I've already forgotten. India Red. And just adding a little bit of sort of shading where I think it's necessary. Now I did add a little bit of distress ink over in some areas as well, and then I decided that I wanted a little bit of a deeper shadow and shading in some areas. So I'm actually going in with my Stabilo All Black pencil. This again dries permanent as long as you've watered it out. I wasn't adding too much water because I didn't know whether it was going to stick to my background. Actually it did, it was fine, but I just felt that especially at the bottom where most of the shadows would be, I did need something that was a little bit deeper in colour. Now I am mostly taking the colour straight from the nib of the pencil, the lead of the pencil. I'm not quite sure what we should be calling it, the pigment part of the pencil. So I'm just taking a damp brush and just taking it from the actual colour. I'm trying not to touch the wood because I don't want to get water into the wood of the actual pencil, which could cause it to rot away if it got too wet. So this is where I'd got to so far. I was quite pleased with how it was looking, but I did feel it needed something more. And for me, often stamping is something that is necessary. So this little stamp set is Vintage Text by Polkadoodles, which is a UK company. I don't know if this stamp set is still available, but any sort of scripty, texty stamp set would work. Text is always a good all-rounder, or anything that's like a grid effect or something with very basic sort of mark making are always good ones if you wanted a generic stamp set that would work with lots of different projects. So I'm going in with the Archival black ink. Now this ink is a permanent ink and it goes over lots of different surfaces. You do need to make sure obviously that it does dry. You can heat set it like just to help it along, but I find it's usually fine. And I'm just adding little tiny sections, mostly along the edge, because sometimes just having something darker around the edge of your project acts a bit like a frame, and that then draws your eye into the center of the image. I did also feel that I did need a couple of little extra bits as well, just to add some extra interest into the middle. And then well, there you go, I'm actually heat setting it. So especially since it's gone over that matte medium, so it might require a little bit more than maybe usually. If I'm stamping onto a porous paper, then I wouldn't worry too much. Now I'm going in with my Copic Acrea, and this is the Snow White pen. This is probably my most used of the Copic Acrea sets, and I do like the nice fine tip. And I just wanted to go in and add some highlights just to bring some of the detail and some of that imagery out, because I felt that it wasn't looking a little bit sort of all one thing and it needed something just to help lighten up some of the areas. And when I finish this bit, I do believe I just go in with some sentiments from the Tim Holtz label stickers, the Thoughts set, which is one of my favourites, and then that will be the whole project completed. If you have enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you could give me a thumbs up. There is also now an option, sometimes, I don't know if it's on all devices, but you can hype a video. This has been brought in to help smaller creators such as myself, and it doesn't cost you anything. All it does, it just gives you the option to hype the video. It gives my video points or something, and the more points your video has accrued, the more I think YouTube try to help by promoting it to a wider audience. So if you have got the opportunity to give any of my videos a hype, that would be fantastic, as any little thing really does help. Likes, subscribes and comments, they're all brilliant. They all help YouTube to know that people are engaging with your videos and it's things that people might want to be watching. So thank you ever so much for watching today. I will show you at the end as well my membership list, who are the people who have become super supporters of my channel. And if you are interested, I will add some more information into the description box below. And so until the next time, thank you ever so much for watching, and bye-bye.